Very good. Well, I'm glad everybody's here, and we're excited to talk about a new plugin that we've been working on, which we have named. And naming the product itself was a whole experience. And trying to come up with something unique that is descriptive, that is not already in use, that is trademarkable, all these things was quite the challenge. So we've internally had this plugin for a while, for a couple years or so, and we have internally been calling the project Meeting Minutes. And Meeting Minutes was a plugin that just allowed us to post uh, clients' meeting minutes in an accessible table on their website. So there's many factors that go into making sure that something like that is accessible. On the surface, it sounds like a pretty simple concept, but there's a little more than meets the eye in that case. And we're jumping to it a little bit. But the name that we've come up with, the official name, is, drumroll, William, where's your drums?
No,
No drums.
the soundboard. I can tap my keyboard.
There you go. We need a soundboard for real. It's called BoardScribe. So it's kind of made out of two words, board. We really wanted board to be in the word. That's BOARD, not
the other one.
Not to be confused with BORED, as in a board, a board of people, and scribe as in writing things down, taking note. And so together it's BoardScribe. This is a place where you can take your meeting minutes from your board meetings, and you can organize them and post them onto your website in a way that's reliable, in a way that's accessible. So the unofficial official description, because this plugin is kind of new, we're still in approval phase for the plugin. So that means that there is going to be a free offering of this plugin, and that is currently in approval stage with WordPress.org. Hopefully by the time you watch this back, it will be approved. And then we will in the future have a pro version of this plugin released as well. So it's publish accessible, searchable board meeting minutes and agendas for councils. So this could be your HOAs. This could be school boards, nonprofits. It helps them display their they have public record transparency. Some boards are required to publish these things. City councils and county governments, schools, to say the least. And there is some compliance around this as well. I'm not super versed in these laws or the compliance, but there's a law called the Sunshine Law that has certain requirements around boards and the things that they need to track and what they need to make public for people to access. So what makes this plugin accessible, right? So taking PDFs or documents and outputting them into a table is I got distracted by a comment in here where somebody's really into your Zelda.
I also smiled about that. So I will say before we go off, so yeah, I have that up there. It is a 3D print. So if anyone wants to make one, just buy yourself a cheap 3D printer.
Yeah, or an expensive 3D printer, right?
Yeah. You could buy the expensive one. I'll stick with the cheap one.
Very cool. So what measures have we taken to make sure that outputting your board minutes is accessible, right? So in BoardScribe, we provide a unique descriptive link names. Each agenda and /minutes links gets an ARIA label. So what a lot of times happens in these tables is it just reads out the same thing for every document, and it's not descriptive for somebody using a screen reader, or even worse, it just reads out the file name and if a file's not named correctly, that could be a big problem. So the plugin adds an ARIA label that is formatted like view agenda for Monday, January 5th, 2026. Instead of a full, so you end up with something very descriptive for screen readers, and instead of like a full page of ambiguous view agenda links all the way down the page, right? Like, and if you go down the page, you just be like view agenda, view agenda, view agenda, and the screen reader's like view agenda for what, right? So you do have a little bit of context when you're in a table, like if the date is within the same table row. But we also found a lot of times that these tables are not scoped correctly and to be as semantic and accessible as possible. So this outputs in either through a shortcode or through a block, and we announce paginated changes. So this is dynamic content, so it's coming in through JavaScript, and so the pagination changes will be announced to the screen reader of those changes. And you wouldn't believe how many times we've gone through clients' websites where that is not the case.
It's never the case.
Never. Yeah, I mean, announcing pagination is a little bit of a difficult thing. You want to do it, with an ARIA live region that is set to polite, so that you're not just, announcing it over top of other things. So we've taken a lot of care inside of BoardScribe to ensure that the pagination is accessible. Focus moved into the table after a page change, so the keyboard users aren't dumped back at the top of the page. Now, this isn't always the case with BoardScribe because the content does refresh dynamically, correct, William?
Yes, that is true. And in the case of dynamically refresh content, I believe we focus people right back at the beginning of the table.
Yeah.
That's why it's tabbable. But in general, other systems typically don't move. So to get to the next set of listings, you have to reverse tab 500 times.
Right. Cool. So proper table semantics, right? So scoped columns, headers, row headers on the title cell, so that the screen reader announces which meeting each cell belongs to. We do on the keyboard scrollable table, so that if there is overflow, or it makes it easier for a keyboard to navigate through the table. In the pagination, of course, we set the ARIA current to true, and we are making sure that the pagination itself has an ARIA label of pagination, and that it's using a semantic navigation element. Screen reader text for empty cells. So if there's like an agenda that's not available, we actually output agenda not available instead of just a blank cell. To help give the screen reader context, because they can't see that the cell's empty. Responsive stacking, so cells keep their meaning on mobile. Editable column and link labels, so you can write your own accessible links. So it'll default to like agenda with an ARIA label that makes it descriptive, but you can also edit each link text that you import to your own liking and make it even more descriptive for visual users and for screen readers as well. Cool. So, William, do you want to run down kind of the breakdown between free and pro a little bit? We can do this visually as we go along, or we could talk about it. You want to do it visual?
Sure. Yeah, that be easier for me, I think. Okay.
Yeah, we're not sharing our screen yet, but we are about to right now.
Do you want me to start with just free on?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's start with just free.
So
So William's pulling up his screen, and
yeah, so general feature is the base feature is this custom post type that I have open now. The board means every meeting is a custom post type. It is a reduced set of what you might expect from WordPress. So let's click into this first post type right here. You can see there is 4 individual fields. All of everything we see here is part of the free plugin that we will release on .org. So the first field is the meeting title. It's right up here at the top where you would expect. The next field we offer is the date. So the meeting date does not necessarily have to be the exact same date as the published date. The published date can be set in advance, and there is handling for meetings that are in the future, upcoming meetings. We also have an agenda URL field. This field here is a plain text field where you can paste any document type, any page, any link you want. Right here in Minds, I have a demo PDF file. There's also a media library button. You can click on that media library button and the model will pop up. It's the standard WordPress media library. You can pick any file from your media library to put in here. That could be images, PDFs, Word documents, wherever you choose. Next field is the meetings URL. It's the same deal. It's a plain text field. It can be any type of document, file, link you want. And it has the same media library option. And the final option we have is it's just a checkbox for meeting not held. And some meetings might need to be announced that they are cancelled, postponed, or not held for some other reason, but you're still required to announce that schedule. So this checkbox here can be used to toggle on and off whether the meeting was actually held or not. And then if you make any changes here, you can just click update, publish, save in the right-hand sidebar, which is the standard classic editor format. And all of this input is classic editor style. None of this is blocks because there is no content on these individual meetings. They're just this set of 4 fields: the date, agenda URL, meetings URL, and a boolean of meeting not held.
right. And if you if you don't add a title to a new board meeting post, what happens?
It does generate a title based on the meeting date. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact format. I think it is just meeting : the date. I mean, I can test that.
Yeah, it's board.
There we go. Board meeting.
Yeah.
Hyphen and then the date in this format.
Yeah, just a little thing that we're trying to do to make it to make it
it makes
just
it
easier to add these. We want to kind of remove friction from people adding their meeting minutes because they're like, what should I title this? Because this title really doesn't get output anywhere, right?
It depends on what template you're using for the output, but generally it is possible to show this not through well, I think it is possible through the free. It does get
it does. Yeah. It sure does.
The standard left-hand side title.
But the reason why I say that is because the title is kind of a funny field that we've had in this kind of internal plugin for a long time, but we always turn it off.
Yes, and it is possible to turn this off. So I guess I can show the next set of features. So we have in the menu, we have a settings link.
Well, before you do, hold on. I want to pull up this comment that says "Long live classic."
I think a lot of developers really like classic.
Yeah, I don't want to burst your bubble here, but we're about to get very non-classic editor here in a minute. But yes, the post type for the defining your meetings, your board meetings, is a classic editor currently. But we're about to go deeper on the block editor here in a second. But go ahead, William, with the settings.
So before we get to the block editor, we have the settings page in the menu, which is under the board meetings top level item. It's the final item in this setting. And we have 3 options here. General, which contains one default option we have currently. You can toggle it on and off. It is to delete data on uninstall. This is just a way for us to clean up anything we save. I will point out that we actually will never delete the content that is saved in your meetings. If you want to delete that, you should delete that yourself. We will only ever delete settings that we've stored in the database if this toggle is on. And yeah, there's a red warning here that says warning cannot be undone. It is irreversible. If you toggle this on and uninstall, any settings we save will be gone. So keep that in mind. And also keep in mind we currently don't have any settings, so in free. So maybe this will be gone by the time this releases, but worth calling out. The second item in this menu is the shortcode builder. So if we click onto this, you will see all in the left-hand column of what appeared. So we have a shortcode builder title. Configure your shortcode options below, then copy the generated shortcode and paste it into any page or post. So this is a shortcode that most people who use WordPress will understand shortcodes. Our shortcode is EDBS_BoardScribe, and it's in the square brackets. So that is shortcode pattern, standard WordPress shortcode. If you paste that shortcode, underneath that we have a preview of what you will see. I'll come back to that in a second. On the left-hand panel, we have an accordion that contains all of our settings. So we have the display settings, column labels, link labels, and hide columns. So 4 individual groups of settings. Generally, you will be modifying just these display settings. So we have a bunch. First one is included years. This is a filter to show just a single individual year. So if I were to type 2022 in this field, in the right-hand sidebar, the preview updates and the shortcode updates. And you can use any permutation of basically any of these settings, but if you pick a start date or an end date, which are the 2 next settings, it overrides the included years. The start and the end date take priority. Right. The next one is how many posts per page you want. The default 20 per page, but you can change this number however you want. And below that, we have a toggle that is to show all. If you want to show every one of your meetings, you would toggle that on. If you have hundreds or thousands of meetings, you probably don't want to use that. But if you have a number, then yeah, like if you have maybe 50 or 60, no issue with turning that on. And you might want to show all of these posts on the same page. Then we have the held date format, which is a standard PHP date format. We also have a link to php.net/manual/en/datetime.format.php, which you can reference the full held date format. And that is what gets output in the date format field inside of the table. So your date will be formatted with whatever format you pick here. And it's free form. You can pick any format that you might want. The not held format is the next thing, and it is slightly different. If a meeting is not held, you might only want to show a month and year as opposed to a specific date, which is what our default is, the capital F, capital Y.
Yeah, so if a meeting's not held, right, there's not really a specific date for a meeting not being held, but so you might want to change the date format to be like you said, just June.
Just month and year or something else.
Yeah.
Next setting is a display template, and in we only have table as the default format right now, but when we get to the Pro plugin, we have one additional template that we can show off. We have a toggle after that, which is to force all columns to be the same width. By default, they will automatically wrap based on the size of the contents, and that can be jarring as people change between pages or scroll between different tables, page reloads. So you can force the columns to be the same width, and they'll be equal width, number of columns divided by total space. And then the final display setting is a custom CSS class, which you might want to style a specific menu or a specific table to be a specific way. You can add a custom CSS class here, which will help developers to make sure that they only modify the display of the table that they want. Next set, so we have column labels. Every one of the 4 columns, the title, date, agenda, and minutes, you can change the label that appears at the top of the table. And the link labels, you can also modify them. So inside the table, we have view agenda and view minutes for those 2 content types. You can change them to whichever you want. And finally, we have a hide columns field where you can turn off any one of the columns from the table. So if we turn off title, we will then have only 3 columns, date, agenda, and minutes in the table, which is most commonly the way we use this on client websites. We normally have just these 3 columns.
Right. Yeah, so that's a great walk down of the shortcode builder. I do want to kind of pause on the shortcode builder a little bit here because this is kind of an unusual feature, right? You don't see these too often, and what this does is in real time when you make the changes, it actually generates the shortcode for you to copy out, right?
Correct. So the shortcode in this right-hand panel, the full shortcode is listed. So the included years, equal width columns, which columns are visible, which columns are hidden, and there's a copy button. So I do see we have a question. How much gets passed in the shortcode versus stored
This
in
one,
the database?
Yeah.
And it could get quite long. So everything gets stored in the shortcode. Nothing gets stored and fetched via database query here at all. This is just configuration in the shortcode, and there is the button to copy it. And we get a toast appear, shortcode copied to clipboard. That does get announced for screen readers as well. So you can click the copy button beside the shortcode and get that. Or you can handwrite your own shortcode if you know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect anyone with so many options to handwrite these.
And
An
that's
interesting
what
thing is the preview as well below here is a live preview. If I were to change any of the settings on the left-hand side, so if I change the included year to be just this year, 2020, 2026, the meetings are updated in this preview. It is a live preview. And this is exactly the same markup that you will get on the front end. You will see here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the shortcode, Michael had a question here, curious if it's possible to result in a very long shortcode to copy and paste. A fairly long shortcode. I don't know very long, but that's part of the reason why we kind of built this shortcode builder was, to kind of assist the user along and not having to like build this themselves. And it kind of serves as kind of a secondary kind of documentation of sorts on the shortcode. Like we can write documentation on how to string together all these parameters in the shortcode, but it's a lot easier to actually just see it in action here.
Yes.
But so this shortcode is kind of unique too, because, technically, William, can you speak to how this relates to the block that's available in the free board meetings plugin?
Yes. So from a technical perspective, the rendering of the table outputs the exact same whether you use the shortcode or not. So all of these settings that are available in the shortcode builder are also also available in the block. They are in sync entirely. Now, I have a possibly in progress version of Pro, so when I show you that, some of these column names might be different, but in general, they will be completely in sync.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. And before we move on, we have one final item in the settings page. So we have a support tab, and if you click on that, it loads up, general documentation links, contact links, and it will link to some quick start guides. People can click through. These currently are not live, but by the time this goes out, ideally they will all link somewhere, and people can get people can get whatever information they need, like getting started with BoardScribe, displaying meetings with the shortcode, etc., etc. There is a lot of help will be available if someone runs into a problem.
Cool. Well, that sounds good. Why don't we jump over and take a look at the block then? So
Sure.
we were talking about Classic Editor, and we've got some Classic Editor fans, and I think we've got some Block Editor fans as well. We are fans of both on this end.
Yeah.
You know,
So what I've done is I've gone to just add new post, and you can put this on a page or a post or anywhere you want. So I've just came to the standard post editor, and I've called the title of the page meeting page.
right. And it'll work in a block theme as well. Like if you're in
Correct.
a
You can
block
put it
theme.
on if you have a full site editing theme. You can paste it. They're just fine, and you always have the shortcode. So the shortcode block exists in WordPress, and you can actually just take the shortcode and paste it right here. I have also used the shortcode inside of page builders like Elementor, and that is also perfectly possible. So as far as the block goes, if you type / and start to type in board, you will get the board means option as a block. So if you select that, you instantly get a live copy with all the default settings for the default settings matching what the shortcode defaults are, right? The defaults are the same. And in the right-hand sidebar on the block options, we have similar groups. We have display settings, column labels, link labels, and hide columns. So these are all the same. In the block editor, you also have the advanced section, which is another place where you can put a CSS class, which redundant in our use case, but the additional CSS field also exists here under advanced, and both of these are core WordPress features. So all of the settings are effectively the same across all of the different groups. So, yep, and if you change one of the settings, the live preview seems to not be updating as expected. Oh, it is because I'm only showing the 6 items I have this year. So if I change it to 2022 again, yeah,
there you go. Yeah,
number of different means.
cool. Can you show changing a table header name or?
Yes. So if you go through the down to the column labels option, and let's say we wanted to change the title in the header of the table to be called meeting name. You can just change that in the sidebar. It instantly updates in the preview here in the actual editor panel, and now the title of that first column is meeting name. It's exactly what was typed in the options at the side. And similar story with the link labels. If we didn't want to call the minutes, if we wanted to, instead of saying view minutes, we wanted to say see notes, you can type that into the label field, and then that is what the link and similarly its label will say in the table.
Yeah. So fully customizable, like the meeting name or the formerly title name cell, you can go down and turn that off, which we have turned off on many of the projects that we do to not cause confusion. So this probably looks like, turn that back off. Yeah. The without the title, it looks more like what you would normally see on a meetings agenda page or a board page. So we're not seeing any pagination here, but we see the pagination on the front end, right?
Correct. So here, this is just the preview, but if I were to publish this page and then click the view post, then here we are on the front end. Oh, I'm showing all of the items. Let me, I gotta go back to the edit. And just for sake of showing this, I'm going to remove the included years and resave the page so that we will have a longer list. And then back to the preview front end. Oh,
you still You still showing all?
I'm still showing all. I maybe have got a bug here in the front end.
Oh, well, limit it. Can you limit it to like 10 and see what that does?
That is the bug. I see that field
Oh,
is missing here. So
oh, very cool. Try it with
I guess I
shortcode.
will fix that. I actually do have a different page open that I can show. So earlier I set up a different
Oh, okay,
page
there
that
you go.
has a couple of them. So if I scroll all the way to the end of this, we can see there is pagination. So we have the previous, and then numbered pages, and then next at the end. So we have 7 pages total of meetings on this. If I were to click, say, number 3 on this, focus shifted back to the top of that table specifically. So
Yeah, so that you said that table.
I have 2 on this page.
Yeah, so this works with multiple tables on the same page.
Correct. So if you wanted to show just 2022 in one section, 2025 in a different section, you could filter it based on that, and you could place them in different places on the page. There is no one per page limitation here.
Right, and we pass query parameters to that target specific.
Correct.
block.
So if you were to, you could hot link someone directly to page 5 of this table as needed.
And that, since we actually do update the URL, that allows for forward and backwards paging, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So you could press the back key on the browser, it would move you back or forward as needed. It is fully native browse patterns.
Right. On the view links, and part of the big thing about BoardScribe was that we are allowing you to do something quickly that to kind of abstract the table creation out of the way, and we take the heavy lifting on that. But also in that regard, it's to make it accessible. That's kind of hard to read. I don't know if you can zoom in.
Yeah, trying.
But it's going to zoom everything. There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, on every one of the view links, either the view meeting or the view agenda or the view minutes links, we output an ARIA label. So this one that I've just picked at random says view agenda for Saturday, February 12th, 2022. And the visible text is view agenda, but the label for screen readers will read out with the date included so that context is never lost as you tab through the table.
Right. And if you change the label from view agenda to something else, it will the ARIA label will update.
Correct. The label will reference the beginning of the label is always the same as the visible label, and that is a AAA requirement. I can't remember the exact criteria, but
yeah.
The beginning of the label is always the same as the visible text.
Cool. And the table scoping as well, like, is properly set up for accessibility?
Yes, correct. So if we inspect the headers, we have a TH scope of column and a row of column header on each of the columns, which scopes the headers appropriately. And if we look at a row as a TR role equals row, and yeah, so each of the scopings for the headers is scoped to
right
where it is.
And then we do have a row header on the row, correct? Yeah. Yeah, at the very top.
Yes.
There. Yeah. So this delineates that this is the header for that whole row. Yep, right there.
Yeah. It has
roll.
And a roll of row headers.
Roll equals roll header. Yep. Cool. And we don't have a screen reader up and running right now, but if you were to paginate and go through these pages, it would be announced to the screen.
It would be appropriately announced. We tested that before, so everything is done. I guess while I have this open, we can also quickly show, if you go to mobile size view, there is actually there's quite a difference in variance of how it looks. As opposed to being columns up and down, we actually have groups of rows So the title is now a row, the date's a row, agenda is a row, and the minutes is a row. And these are appropriately scoped as well.
Yeah. So a lot of times with tables and responsiveness, you get down to the responsive screen, and it's very difficult to get something that is, legible or easy to see. And a lot of times, and I think it's fairly okay. A lot of times what people do is they just do an overflow scroll on the table. So you just scroll left and right and you can read all the table rows, which I think it's fine. But we wanted to go a little bit extra of a step and actually, collapse this down to a mobile view that was really acceptable for and easy for people on mobile devices to read. Just kind of taking that extra step to kind of go a little above and beyond and give it a little bit more of a visual, more accessible visual view of that table.
Yes, and when we get to showcasing a pro table, I will be able to show the horizontal scroll, because if on pro you can have additional columns, and I specifically picked this theme because the content area is really quite narrow.
Yeah.
And the only option here is to add a scroll.
Cool. Well, that's the free plugin. We are hoping to have this out very shortly. We are currently under review with the plugins team, and if you follow any of those things, that in these days it takes a lot longer to get things through, but we are hoping that comes out here later this week or early next week. And we are doing some of the finishing touches around documentation. We always take a lot of pride in our documentation, making sure that we not only create a good plugin for you, but that we provide you with all the documentation that you need to be able to be successful with the plugin. Because there's more to it than what you see here. There's a public REST endpoint that you can actually hook into and make your own things off of this post type. You can, there's a slew of filters throughout this plugin that you can use to filter things to your own liking, and we will do our part to document all of that for you and link that in the settings page as well. We probably should go into lightning mode here, William, and start going through some of the pro features.
I will try and go as quick as I can. So I have enabled Pro, and we are back on the custom post type view section. Now you will see there is a slight difference here. Previously, we just had title and date by default as the two fields on this post table, but now we actually have meeting groups and also meeting types as headers, and these correspond to taxonomies that are available through Pro. So you can actually group your meetings by the meeting group. So, for example, in my test data, I have work session, retreat, special. So these are free text. These are standard taxonomies. You can call whatever you want. And these are used to group meetings for the purposes of filtering them. Now, you have a second type as well, which I've not got in my test data, but the meeting types. And again, that's also a free text option you can put in any type of meeting you choose. And it's just a way of you grouping particular meetings in particular ways. You might want a table that only shows the work sessions, not retreats or special meeting types, or any combination. That is possible with the Pro plugin due to these taxonomy group filters.
And those kind of lean themselves to future features that we have planned for the plugin as well. Sure, you can go into the block or the shortcode and you can actually filter by these taxonomy terms, but we're also looking at actually bringing some kind of some filters into the block as well, to where you can actually output everything, and then you have like a filters that you can quickly dynamically search all the boarded meeting minutes all in one place.
So yeah, we have two new items that are related to them. We have the groups link under our board meetings. So we have the standard board meetings link, add new meeting, and under that's one of the new links, groups. Under that is another link, types, and those are directly in reference to the meeting types and meeting groups columns. So these are the taxonomies, how you would add new terms, modify terms and things around. Below that, we also have BoardScribe documents. So this is a pro-specific feature, and it is not necessarily a taxonomy. We will talk more about that when we go back to the Add New Meeting page, which will have some additional new fields. I will open that now. Or actually, I will open an existing meeting. Show that. So this is the equivalent of the Add New Meeting page. I'm on an edit copy of an existing meeting I've set in. So it starts off with the date. It has agenda followed by minutes, and these are a new field type. It has the URL, which was previously there. That is the same as before with a media library option underneath it. But there's this new button at the top, which is select or create a document. So if I were to click this, there will be a notice that says switch and will remove the entered URL, continue. So you can either confirm that with the remove and switch button, or you can cancel it. I'm going to click cancel, and it just goes away. Your focus gets returned back to this button. So I'll click it again, and I will click remove and switch. Now this field has changed. It is a text field, plain text field. So if I were to start typing in agenda July, there is a flyout menu that appears, create agenda July. If I were to select that, there's now an edit and a remove links, and this has just created the draft post. So if you want to have a specific post visible that isn't created yet, you can link them, create it right here, or by editing it, because it gets created as a draft by default. And that is what the BoardScribe documents are. So not only can you link directly to a piece of content, with Pro you can then feasibly go through and create that exact content at meeting creation time.
Right. And I think we should pause and talk about why you would want to link to something besides a PDF or a Word document. Why or even why would you want a custom page in a custom post type to link to?
Well, this is feasibly like a parent and child type relationship. This new agenda July, which I have created as a draft, is technically a child of the board meeting July 3, 2026, this meeting here. And you might want to create the post or page as, with the block editor. So if I were to click edit on this, it just takes you to the block editor. You can fill this in however you choose, combinations of charts, images, text, videos, anything you want, anything you can build in the block editor can be where this goes to. And this does become a dedicated page on the website that people can be linked directly to, as opposed to discovering just through the table.
And I think on our end, and the reason why, and this was kind of a feature that was really pushed by Amber, and in thinking it through, we saw a lot of value in this as well, because the problem with PDFs is that a lot of times PDFs are not accessible at all, and they're hard to read. Sometimes they open a new window, and you got to zoom in to be able to read everything, and they're limited to what a PDF can support.
And while I was building this feature, actually, I will say I looked at probably hundreds of PDFs and found only 3 in total that passed general accessibility requirements. So almost always a PDF is not going to be fully accessible.
So that's not to say that like this page that you're creating is fully accessible. That's just to say that you have a better chance of getting something here that is accessible. If it's not accessible, you need to run accessibility checker on the page and do a little bit of manual auditing and checking to make sure that your theme itself is accessible. But this allows us to have alternative content that is not a document, that is an actual web page, and that has a relation to the board meeting itself. generated in real time. And William's taken a lot of effort here to make this a little bit more of a seamless process of adding new custom post types. So you're not having to jump back to that custom post type, create them, then come over here and attach them. We're doing all that legwork for you with this method.
Yes.
So
I have come back to the edit page for the board itself, and we're at this point. So I do want to call out that if I were to remove this, because I had no previous documents created, you saw only the create option. But if I were to remove that and go back to select document and start typing in July, it is actually available here. So this document can be attached to several meetings as needed. If you have the same agenda for every meeting, you can create it one time and attach it everywhere. No need to copy paste links or anything. You can search for it while adding or picking from the document selector. So next field is the minutes field, and it's the same. It has the enter URL, select or create document, free text field, and media library, and it works exactly the same way. Under the hood, there is a type assigned to this agenda July, which is an agenda type, and similar is true of minutes. So you can only pick an agenda type in the agenda field, and in the minutes, a minutes type. And there might be more types in future, or you can extend that yourself as needed if you're a developer, but it's worth calling out because that's an invisible constraint here.
But it's in an effort to kind of keep that select kind of clean, and that you're only selecting minutes in this field, things that were actually intended to be minutes or things that were intended to be
feasibly they could be called the same thing. I have came across a situation where they had a PDF called July and a PDF called July, and they were different contents. I mean, I'm picking July as an example, but they had the same PDF file with the same name with two different types of content, and this keeps them separated the way we've got this set up.
Right.
I will try and power through just a little bit here. So we have some additional new fields for Pro. The meeting not held is a free feature, but below that we have a date display override. So in the date field, you might actually not want a full meeting date displayed. You might only want to say July or March special. So you can override that field or that output here in the table. So if you want a custom date visible, or it can be anything you choose, but this is a free text field. Set it and it replaces the displayed date in the tables. We also have a location field, which feasibly might be a physical location. It could be a link. It could be whatever you want. It is free text, but the expectation is location will be a place, a physical address. And in the not too distant future, this probably will become a taxonomy of its own. So you can create your locations one time and then just select them here in this field. We also offer a live stream URL, a recording URL, and these are just links. They will be links in the output of the table. And then closed caption transcripts. If you include a video, you most likely want to also include a transcript alongside those videos. And again, that has a media library, and it opens the media library. You would just upload it to WordPress the same way you would upload any other file, and then pick it, and it would appear in the link field for the transcript. The final one is a supporting document. So at the end of the table, in its default configuration, we have a supporting documents thing from in Pro, and that has two options. Well, first you have to click the add document button, and then you have two fields, a document name, which free text name field, and then we have a link field, and that will be the link to the document, and the link will be output with the name you put in the first field. Or you can choose a file, or you can choose to remove it. And choose a file, opens media library, remove, deletes the row, and you can have any number of supporting documents you like.
Yeah, and we do have kind of some thoughts around integrating this with the official BoardScribe documents post type as well. Yeah. Very cool.
One
So
other thing to call out is that in the right-hand side, we don't just have the update or the publish option anymore. We do have the taxonomies, the meeting groups, which are pre-filled with the taxonomies I created for my. These are manually created for my test data. The meeting types, which I did not select in any of my test meetings, actually do have 3 pre-filled options: regular meeting, retreat, special meeting. And you can pick from any of those 3, or you can add a new type as you want, because these are just standard WordPress taxonomies.
Very good. So I think that's the board meetings post. We should probably take a look at the additional block settings.
Yeah, so I believe this one here is the additional block settings. Let me just reload this page. So this is one of the blocks, and as we can see, it spans horizontally, requiring a horizontal scroll. And I specifically picked this theme because it has a short content area but no overflow set, so that we could actually see that the scrolling is required here.
Yeah.
But this here is the block. We have all the additional new options in height columns. All of the additional columns, like the location, live stream, recording, transcript, and supporting documents, are off by default, as opposed to the 4 default fields of title, date, agenda, and minutes, which are on by default. So we have the hide columns group, a settings group, which is for the default columns, and we have a show columns settings group, which are for the pro only features. So you can upgrade to pro from free and nothing will change on the output. You get the option of picking and choosing. You might have supporting documents, you can toggle that on. It also gets the live reload. And you can see in my table, I do have in my test data some meetings which have supporting documents.
Yeah. So supporting documents get output in a list, right?
Correct. Do I have any test data? Yeah. Yep. So I have this test data here, which there is 2 supporting documents, and this is a column or cell in the table with a list in it, and it is an actual semantic list. This isn't just visual.
And we do this for accessibility reasons, so that when a screen reader gets to that list, that it actually reads out the number of items in that list, and screen readers that are good with their keyboards can skip over that list if they don't want to read it.
Correct. I'll just toggle on all of the fields so that we can see I have a table with test data in all of these, and I will save this post and we can have a look at it on the front end. So here on the front end, as you can see, this extends beyond the edge of the screen.
Are you still zoomed in?
No.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to?
No, it's okay. I was just curious if you were.
No, I'm not zoomed in, and I have this sized specifically.
Oh, okay.
So that we can show that this does have
side scroll.
Side scroll. And this is not the side scroll for our table as such. This is because this theme, which is the latest default theme, 2026.5, it works. Right? This is the default theme and it doesn't break, but they have no overflow hidden on a very narrow content column size.
Oh yeah, I see.
So yeah, if I use tab, we can get through all of the items as tab stops work. If I was using a screen reader, I would have a slightly enhanced table navigator. This is default keyboard features, but table navigation would actually read entire rows and allow using arrow keys to move between them.
Well, what if you want a different look? Do you have this set to a year?
So
you do.
I do. I actually have this as the timeline. So if I go back to the editor and I scroll up to the display settings, the first setting is the display template, and the default is table, which is what we looked at previously. But in Pro, we also have this timeline view. And this is, it forces all meetings to be shown if you pick the timeline view, because the timeline view is every meeting grouped by year, and each year has its own table. So
Right.
what I'm scrolling up and down now is 2026's, and then we've reached 2025, and these are separate tables, 2 tables, 1 table per year. And it's all
Right.
part of the same block, but they are individual tables. And that was a need for a client specifically, but I think this will probably be quite a common need. So you could create individual tables for every single row. But with this display template, we just make it easy.
Right. And the templates is kind of a newer feature that we are looking to flesh out and provide a nice set of templates that can be used. Maybe even things as simple as, you know, a striped table that kind of brings some design elements in. And in the Pro plugin, we're also thinking about some you know, style level changes that you can make to the block that you can control, like the header background color and header foreground color and things like that. But
I will call out as well that calendar, please don't ask for calendar. I did try and build calendars, and calendars are really quite complicated to do accessibly.
Yep.
So while I have a stashed PR or stashed branch with calendar options, I think it is probably too complicated of an accessible navigation to really output this as calendars. Potentially a single month for upcoming meetings or next year's planned meetings, but in general, I would suggest it isn't great for most people.
Yeah, it's tempting when you build something like this to kind of think of it like a calendar, right? Because essentially it kind of is a calendar. And so there is kind of that pull to bring in some of those familiar calendar features that you've come to recognize from, you know, some with inside of WordPress. And but we're trying to kind of narrow this down and niche this to something very specific and needs for board members. And we should pause now for the wonderful sounds of of
Don't get me started on my neighbor and the seagulls.
Scottish seagulls as they pass by.
I wish they were just passing by, but I bet my neighbor has just fed them.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to have to hear that for the rest of the night.
I mean, it puts me in a calming state.
I do live near the sea in Scotland. So.
They're showing off now. They know we're talking about them. And I mean, I have pictures of, like, you know, the ocean and mountains and a castle.
I think that's not too far off, but I do live in a built-up area.
Yeah. So very cool. So that's most of the Pro features.
Yeah, do you think we have time to maybe talk through some future?
Some future. Yeah, I don't. I mean, there's a lot around this. There's a lot around, you know, governance, and a lot around of approvals of board meeting minutes, and there's a lot around, you know, activity tracking, like to kind of make an audit trail of when board meeting minutes are posted, and every time a board meeting is modified and who it's modified by, and even like you know, there's some things that require approvals of boards, right? When meeting minutes are posted, can we build a system that allows each board member to approve the meeting minutes before they get posted to the website? We have a whole slew of features kind of planned out for this Pro plugin to really flesh it out into kind of a one-stop solution for everything board meeting minutes or board documents that get posted for WordPress. Am I missing any?
Probably. I do want to call out, though, that while this is designed specifically with boards in mind, I do really think this might just be quite good for any meetings that someone has set up. You don't necessarily have to be holding board meetings, which is why we've provided the ability to edit your labels and these additional fields. You might just, you know, run a game group or have, you know, sports meetings or whatever, you can. This will be usable for that as well. You don't need to take advantage of any of the future governance options we might build. That you can just use this to handle your actual meetings. It doesn't have to be boards.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've made it fully extensible. So like anything that kind of needs a table and you want to make sure the table's accessible, like, I mean, and anything that kind of is date bound, it kind of is a really good solution for that. And BoardScribe, it kind of fits into our offering of accessible WordPress plugins quite well, with accessibility checker and with archive WP, and we have some ideas around how we can integrate BoardScribe directly into archive WP so that you can actually archive some of the board content, so that it can be considered, not current data that is fully archived, and thus allowing you to not have to remediate certain things in regards to accessibility compliance. So we've had a lot of internal talks around that, how we can integrate the two plugins and they work well together. And but there's a little bit of challenges around templates and things like that. So that is BoardScribe, free and pro. We hope to have this out to users very soon in the WordPress plugin repository and on our website. And shortly following that, we hope to have the pro version ready to go out to the public. We are doing our own internal testing. We kind of practice what we preach here. We try to make our accessibility products accessible themselves. So BoardScribe has undergone an initial accessibility audit from our internal team, and we came back with pretty good flying colors. So the dev team gets a round of applause for making stuff accessible. And
it's not a given these days for a developer to be able to do that. It is quite difficult, especially this shortcode builder.
Right.
And I actually did forget one feature in Pro. So we have an import feature in Pro where if you have meetings in a different format, you can provide them as a CSV to get them imported, which is actually how I imported meetings going all the way back to 2020 in this testing. So I used the importer option, and the importer itself is fully documented on the page. It shows the columns, the order it expects, and whether or not they're required, plus a short description about what needs to be in them.
So you could feed that and your current document into Codex or Claude and have it say format my data like this, and then just import it directly here.
Correct. And that is what I did for one of the client websites, is I gave them the format and the contents, and it provided the CSV for their website.
Right. So this is just like another area where in our plugins we're trying to make things easier, because there are plugins that can do this. There's plugins that can import into post types and stuff.
Yeah, but what was the one that Amber was mentioning? WP All Import. She was planning on importing meetings on the client website.
Yeah, that's what we typically use. Yeah.
Feasibly, she can just use this import only. No need to go through the setup on WP All Import. You just make it in the expected format with the required fields, and it is only the title and the date is the required fields. Everything else is optional.
Right. And just it allows us to actually tool this as we move along to our own specific needs. And it takes all that guesswork out of, when you're in one of those importing plugins where you have to, drag the field over,
field maps,
map everything. This just allows us to kind of build something custom to our own needs for our users to get their data in there real quick. So I think that's going to be about it for the episode. Now, I will say that we had a lot of stuff to talk about on Accessibility Checker and Accessibility Checker Pro. and because a lot of work has been done on that, but I'm going to hold off on all those till the next changelog live stream, and we'll go through all that. I mean, the releases are already out. If you saw our last live stream where we kind of showed our new Issues Explorer with Accessibility Checker Pro 2.0, we have done refinements on those things and released updates and fixes and minor little UI tweaks to kind of make that user experience even better since it's an initial release, and just a whole slew of fixes and things that we continue to improve inside of the Accessibility Checker suite of plugins. We will talk more about those next time on the next changelog. I appreciate everybody being here in the chat. I appreciate the seagulls of Scotland joining us and soothing
I
us
don't.
and making us calm.
That only works the first dozen times.
Yeah, and thanks for all your hard work on the new BoardScribe plugin, William, and more work to go. And we are excited to get this out to everybody. Hope everybody has a good month, and we will see you next month on the Accessibility Checker changelog. See ya.
That's it.